what would you suggest for people to overcome the feeling of loneliness?
Well, it takes us back to food, meals, the institution of meals. Eat with other people. Don't eat alone. Find somebody, invite someone out to have a meal with, or cook and invite people into your home. So much happens at the table that isn't about fueling your body. And that there's a kind of connection that happens when we eat together that's really wonderful. It's deeper than a lot of other connections we have, you know. And when we share something, when we share food out of the same common, you know, dish, we're connecting. That's a connection. Sharing food is a very powerful bond between people. It has been for like thousands of years. And we learn things about other people. Why do world leaders always have banquets, right? It's because going back 1,000 years, it's a time where, you know, you don't shoot someone over a banquet table. You know, you put down your arms and you pick up your fork and knife.
You connect. Yeah.
You connect. And I just think the meal is one of the great institutions, and it helps us deal not only with healthier eating, because you're not going to eat junk food. You're not going to eat a microwavable food in front of someone else. You're going to cook something or order in and eat the same thing. And that sharing puts us on the same mental wavelength. It's almost like in training ourselves to someone else, that we're eating the same thing together. And so I think putting yourself, you know, way too many of us eat alone now. And I think it's really destructive to eat alone. When you eat alone, you eat mindlessly. You're in front of the TV or you're reading something, and you just don't know what you're doing. I mean, think about, you know, you're in front of the TV with a bag of potato chips, like, you don't even realize you've eaten a bag. It's just so mindless. Yeah. Also, manners automatically helps people control their appetites. People don't want to act like pigs at a table. Yeah. Whereas when you eat alone, you do act like a pig. So getting away from solitary eating.
Yeah, crumbs all over your belly. You're just like, just eating it. Yeah.
Exactly. You know, in this class I did for Masterclass, we're looking at not just the health effects of food, although those are very important, but there are all these other effects. And that there are ways to align your eating with your values. And we all have different values. And some people, food is just going to be about health. But for other people, it's about their relationship to nature, for example. You know, are they eating organically or sustainably? Is that what matters to them? And for others, it's about ethics. Is this a way, do I feel comfortable eating animals or these animals? So there are moral and ethical questions that come. So much happens at the table, and so where I came out thinking about this and preparing the class is there's no one right way to eat. There's probably a right way to eat if health is your only concern, but if you're thinking about these other things, and eating for pleasure is a perfectly legitimate reason.
Right.
It argues for slightly different kinds of food.
Sure. How does someone come up with their eating values?
Well, that's a process of kind of self-inquiry. I mean, and we go through that in the class about like, so what really matters to you when you think about food? You know, are you someone who thinks a lot about nature and climate change? There's a way to eat if you really want to, you know, make your contribution to reduce climate change. There are foods that have a big climate footprint and foods that don't. Beef is of course the worst offender, and milk. You know, that's a huge part of your climate footprint is if you're a beef eater. But maybe you're concerned about the health of the soil and the health, and what about social justice, the health of the workers in the food system? That argues for slightly different choices too. Yeah. What's great about food, though, is that we're not stuck with one choice. We're very lucky because there are now, you know, there's organic food, there's conventional food, there's what's called regenerative food grown on very healthy soils that we have an opportunity to express our values by our food choices. Yes. That's a great vote to have. You know, right. We're really lucky to have that vote because there are many parts of life we don't have that vote to make.
Right. What are your food values?
Well, I think a lot about the environment. I started out as a writer, writing about nature and gardening, and so I'm very concerned about climate change. And I don't know how you can not be, but a lot of us are not. And so that I think a lot about the environmental impact of what I eat. So I don't eat beef. I eat very little meat. I mostly eat fish. And I'm careful about that too, because some fish is, really unsustainably produced. Some farm salmon is just horrible the way it's produced. Not just for the fish, but for the environment with lots of antibiotics. And I will choose organic when I'm buying plant foods. Organic is not a perfect label, but it's one of the only labels that's monitored by the government. And so that if you buy organic food, it has not been grown with synthetic pesticides. I'm particularly insistent on buying organic wheat products, whether that's pasta or bread. The reason being that it's become common practice in America to spray wheat fields with glyphosate, which is an herbicide that has been linked to lymphoma. The farmers do, it's not allowed in Europe. Farmers do it for the express purpose. They spray it on the wheat fields right before harvest to kill the wheat, because the wheat has to be dry before you can harvest it. So it speeds up that process. It's a really irresponsible use of a pesticide.
Why are there so many things in the American food system that don't happen in Europe, that are legal in other countries?
Yeah.
But here...
Hormones in beef, for example. I mean, every non-organic beef animal gets a hormone implant in its neck. And then we wonder why girls are going through puberty early. I mean, we are exposing ourselves to lots of hormones through our meat. And that's not allowed in Europe either. Europe has tougher environmental rules, especially around food and cosmetics. Believe it or not, there are chemicals in our cosmetics that you can't put in European cosmetics.
Wow.
It's the power of the American food industry. It is dominant. They control Congress. They control the agricultural committees so there have been efforts to ban glyphosate. There have been efforts to, get hormones out of beef, and the industry has stopped it.
Wow.
And the reason for that is we've allowed these industries to get so powerful and monopolistic that we had a great example during the pandemic when there were outbreaks of COVID in the meat plants in the High Plains, Tyson's meat plants. The local public health authorities, so many people were dying on those lines, and they were bringing COVID into their communities. The local health authorities wanted to close down the lines for 2 weeks and just quiet. This is right at the beginning of the pandemic. John Tyson, the president of Tyson, takes out an ad, and a full-page ad in the New York Times. Dear Mr. President, you need to invoke the Defense Production Act, which is designed to get companies to do things they don't want to do to help the war effort. We want you to invoke the Defense Production Act to force our workers back on the line.
Come on.
And within days, President Trump signed an executive order opening up the Tyson production lines. So when a company can force a president to do its bidding, an industry's gotten too powerful.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is crazy. What is the things that you've seen 10 years ago in the nutritional food world that people thought was the way? Science, society thought this was the way, that we now have new evidence and new science showing that that's not the way, and there's something different that is the way. Is there anything that's changed in the last 10 or 20 years?
The biggest thing is something we talked about right at the beginning is ultra-processed food.
Yes.
And we didn't, we'd heard for years that junk food was bad for us, and we thought the reason was there was too much sugar, too much fat, too much salt.
Yeah.
It turns out it's not about the nutrients. It's about the processing itself and all the chemicals that are used. And this is what's making us fat.
The processing itself, not the actual sugar.
There was a really cool experiment done at the National Institute of Health by a scientist who was very skeptical of this theory that processed food was uniquely bad. And he was a great believer that, no, if you get the nutrients right, you'll be healthy. He got a group together. They lived in a facility, so he fed them for 30 days. And divided them into two groups, a control and not, and created two meals for every meal. One was substantially whole foods, The other was substantially ultra-processed food, like 80% ultra-processed food, matched for calories,
right?
Matched for protein, salt, sugar, everything. And people in each group said, eat as much as you want, or as little as you want, up to you. No control on caloric intake.
Consumption, yeah.
The people in the group with the ultra-processed food ate 500 more calories a day. So the way you prepare the food dictates how much you're going to eat. And that blew his mind. And he came around to the thesis that we don't know exactly what it is, but there's something uniquely bad about that kind of food.
Does it not make you feel full? Or does it make you still hungry or craving more?
It could be that because it has so little fiber, it doesn't fill you up in the same way. It could be the fact that it's absorbed really quickly in the body and not going through this long, microbiome processing in your body. I mean, when you process food, you're essentially externalizing digestion. In other words, instead of eating things like plants or even real meat that hasn't been overly processed or turned into hamburger, your body has to work hard to break it down. You burn calories.
Digesting is burning calories.
Yeah. And but as soon as you start doing this high-level processing and removing the fiber, you're creating food that your body can be very lazy about digesting. And so it's absorbed through the small intestine rather than the large intestine. And that may explain it. It could also just be the science, this idea of lying to the body about what you're getting, fooling the body. And it could be other effects in the microbiome. There's some evidence that emulsifiers, which we use to keep food, basically keep the oils and the waters from separating in processed food. Processed food would look even uglier than it does if not for these chemicals. Emulsifiers have damaged the lining of the gut and allow for large particles to get into the bloodstream, which leads to an immune reaction. So it may be that processed food inflames our bodies in ways that are destructive. So the science is still out on the cause, but we know the effect. The effect is you will eat a lot more food if you're eating ultra-processed food, and you will increase your risk of all sorts of chronic diseases. That's really clear.
Where do you feel like in 10, 15 years will be the new science that comes out? Because it seems like there's always something new being, discovered or revealed. Where do you see the nutritional health world moving into in the next 10, 15 years of these other discoveries?
I think we will continue to accumulate evidence that it's really simple. Eat food, not too much, mostly plants. I think that's going to hold up. I'll put money down on that. Mostly doesn't mean no meat. It means some meat. That word, that adverb, pissed off everybody because the vegetarians are like, why don't you go all the way and just say eat plants? And the meat eaters were like, why don't you talk about meat? No, mostly. Let's be reasonable about that. Mm-hmm. I think we are going to learn that a traditional diet of real food is the best way to eat, and it's going to be really simple. And I think we have overcomplicated food, and there's so many reasons to do it, right? I mean, scientists want funding. Companies want to have a health claim. They need to churn. There are 14,000 new food products every year, and a lot of them carry health claims. Isn't it amazing?
14,000 new food products.
14,000 new food products every year. Oh my gosh. Most of them are like ridiculous extensions of something we have. You know, it's like an Oreo in the shape of a straw. You know, this
that's
kind
crazy.
Of, that's innovation.
And there's always an investor who wants to make money, a return on creating this product or this business or this company. And so they want.
And the other economic incentive is that it's not profitable selling simple food that comes off the farm. You make more money processing the food. The more value added. It's the package, it's the health claim, but it's also the tricking it up and you know, giving it new flavors and new colors. And, you know, I mean, think about how many different, check out next time you're in the supermarket, how many Pop-Tarts there are and Pop-Tart-like products. It's just brand extension. So this is capitalism. Capitalism, you know, depends on novelty. The idea that you're going to eat simple foods that you prepare yourself, who makes money on that?
I don't know. The egg business has got to be making money, right? I don't know, like eggs and,
Oh, yeah, no,
apples are making business, but it's
not as much, though. To
Right.
give you an example, I think it's 14 cents of your food dollar goes back to the farmer. It's all the people in the middle who make the money. And farmers will tell you this, or people in the food industry, I'm sorry, not farmers, will tell you that if you want to make money in food, it's not from growing it, it's from processing it.
Wow.
So we have a strong incentive to process food as much as possible. Plus you get something you can put a brand name on, right? You have IP, you have all this value added, and the farmers get screwed.
Crazy. Now, what is the main, the masterclass that you have, what is the main benefit within the masterclass that people will get out of that when they go through it?
Well, my hope is, the reason I did it, I had a couple of reasons I wanted to do it. One was, one of the great things about masterclass is you get a lot of time. Mm-hmm. It's like I forget how long it is, but it's 2.5 or 3 hour class. So you can really go deep.
Yes.
And you don't always get to do that writing articles. So I really appreciated that. And the production values are amazing.
I've seen some of the clips, looks amazing.
Well, they send a crew of like 60 people.
I know, it's crazy, right? It's like a full movie production.
Hollywood. Yeah, it is. And it looks like it. They make you look great. But I'm hyper aware, because I get asked questions, I do a lot of public speaking, of how confused people are about food. And they'll say to me, so should I buy the organic or the conventional or the regenerative or the humane? And there are all these labels in the store, and we're tying ourselves up in knots about what should be a very simple transaction. And for most of human history, people have known what to eat. They learned from their parents, and they learned from what was available. They didn't have to run all these complex algorithms to figure out what a product to buy. So I saw this as an effort to cut through a lot of nonsense about food, whether it's coming from the nutritionists or the marketers, and just let's look at this. Let's take a fresh look. Let's figure out what you care about, because I'm not going to tell you how to eat. It doesn't have that kind of message. My message really is, tell me what you care about, and I'll tell you what to eat. And so we go through the various different motives.
Getting clear on your food values, getting them,
Yeah, figure out what your food values are, and then here's how you might align them with what you're actually eating.
Right.
And so I'm hoping it'll relax people about food. I want people to come out of it with their stress level around when they go to the supermarket down. I don't want them to have to read labels and do this all the time. So
yeah, you talk a lot about intentional eating. It's not just about mindless eating, but being very intentional about these food rules, these values that we create together. And I really love the idea of getting back to the dinner table, or getting back to the commune table with at least one person.
Yeah.
So that we can connect, we can slow it down, we can have more fulfilling conversations, feel more fulfilled spiritually and emotionally, but also nutritionally fulfilled in that process.
Yeah. And I think that, we've reduced food to this transaction between us and the stuff. But in fact, food is not a thing. It's a set of relationships. Food connects you to other people, as it has for all of human history. It's a communal act, but it also connects you to nature. Right? It's your most important connection to the natural world. You affect nature more through your eating than anything else you do.
Wow.
If you think about what agriculture does to nature, right? It's the way we change the landscape more than anything else. It's the way we change the composition of species on the planet. The reason there are, 50 million head of cattle in the U.S. and only 5,000 wolves, it's because we like one and we don't like the other, or the other's a threat to the one we like. And we affect the atmosphere. Greenhouse gas production from the food system is about 33%.
Really?
Yeah. So there's a lot at stake when you sit down to eat. But I want that to feel empowering, that you can actually vote. It's not a burden.
Right.
It's an opportunity.
Right.
So that's what I want to inspire people with, to take their food choices as an opportunity to express their values.
Wow. They can go to masterclass.com and check that out. If they search your name, they can get that at masterclass.com. You've also got a number of, 7, 8 New York Times bestsellers now? What are you at, 12? Something like that, something crazy. How to Change Your Mind has been a phenomenon that's gone all over the world, talking about the psychedelics and the studies that you've done there. But the recent book is more about your mind on plants.
This is Your Mind on Plants, where I look at 3 different psychoactives, one of which we're all involved with, caffeine, almost all of us. And people don't think about that as a drug, but it is a drug. And I think it's a very good drug in many ways. It's had a lot of positive effects for people, although people, like all drugs, people can get in trouble on that. Mm-hmm. You talk about bringing chemicals into our body, we're doing it all the time.
All the time.
And so I look at caffeine, I look at opium. We have such a big problem around opiates now. And I look at mescaline, which is a psychedelic that you don't hear as much about, but is a really interesting substance that Native Americans have been using to heal themselves for a very long time.
Wow. What is the pros and cons of coffee that you talk about, that you've researched, that can truly benefit current health, lifespans, cognitive health, and also what are the cons of caffeine or coffee? Yeah.
So caffeine is a powerful drug. I don't think people realize it, but most of us have an addiction to it. And I got off caffeine for 3 months. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. No caffeine, no chocolate, no tea, no coffee. And I didn't feel myself for that whole time. I got through the withdrawal, which only took a couple days. You didn't feel,
what do you mean, grounded, or you didn't feel connected to yourself? Or?
I felt like I was someone else.
Really?
And it made me realize that being caffeinated was my default state. It's like that was my normal. And I'd been drinking coffee since I was 10. I started early.
So about like 10 years, right? 10, 20 years? No, I was kidding.
A lot more than that, like 50 years.
50 years drinking coffee.
Yeah,
Since you were 10, how did you start at 10? I think I started like 35,
I know. I started early. Everybody said it would stunt my growth. It apparently didn't.
You're tall, yeah.
Maybe I would have been 7 foot without it. But so I felt, it was hard to do. I felt like I had acquired attention deficit disorder. I normally have very good focus. I can concentrate and block things out. You need to write. I couldn't write.
Without the
coffee. I found things came in from the periphery, I got easily distracted. Mm-hmm. And, that's why we take amphetamines, to deal with that. They give us, like caffeine, stimulants give us a focus. And I needed it. So it was really hard. And the first cup after 3 months.
How was it made?
So it was incredible.
It was delicious, right?
It was the best. It may have been the best drug experience I've ever had.
Wow.
Yeah, it was.
I
was euphoric.
So
now you want to know benefits? Yeah. So I looked into this. There are a lot of health benefits to caffeine. Wait,
caffeine or coffee?
That. Yes, it's coffee and tea have the health benefits. It may not be the caffeine. And the reason is that coffee and tea, believe it or not, are the biggest source of antioxidants in the American diet. That's pathetic, actually, but it's true. And so we don't know. Caffeine, we do know, improves performance. Athletes will tell you that. On test taking, it improves performance. If you study for a test and drink caffeine after that, after you've studied, you will remember the material and do better on the test.
Wow.
So it really does enhance mental function. It has some physical benefits too. It reduces risk of certain kinds of cancers. It reduces risk of cardiovascular disease, Parkinson's disease, and reduces risk of dementia. So it has a lot of benefits. The negatives are if it makes you really jumpy. Some people react badly to it or drink too much. It reduces risks of suicide and depression up to 7 or 8 cups. If you're drinking 7 or 8 cups a day, your risk of suicide and depression go way up.
7 cups a day is a lot.
Yeah. But people do. I know people who are sipping it all day long.
That's too much though, right? 7 cups a day, come on.
The big negative on caffeine is it does interfere with good sleep. Even if you stop drinking it at noon, which is my practice, a quarter of the caffeine in your body is still circulating at midnight. It lasts in your body a long time.
So when should you stop coffee by?
Well, at least by noon, but hopefully earlier.
10 a.m. maybe, yeah.
Yeah, if you can. I mean, I go to noon because I sip it while I'm writing in the morning. what happens with even people who can fall asleep, and there are people who can have an espresso at night and fall asleep, it's changing the quality of their sleep. They're losing what's called slow wave sleep. There's REM sleep, which is when you dream, but there's a kind of very deep sleep called slow wave sleep, which is very important for your health. And caffeine reduces the amount of it you have. So I interviewed a bunch of sleep experts for the chapter on caffeine, and none of them use caffeine.
Was it Walker?
Matthew Walker,
yeah.
I don't know if he does now, but he did a master class actually about sleep that's definitely worth checking out.
And he said no caffeine.
Yeah, and he's like against caffeine, but he's softened a little bit.
Yeah, Huberman talks about, he has a cup of coffee, I think early in the morning, but he's like, try to finish it as soon as you can, earlier in the day.
Yeah. Every day when you wake up, you are undergoing withdrawal. That's why you crave coffee. The people who say, I can't talk to you till I have a cup of coffee. The reason is that for most of us, we're drinking coffee to head off those withdrawal effects. The caffeine just lasts long enough during the night that you don't wake up to want coffee. But as soon as you get up in the morning, you want it. So, we are addicted. But addiction, if you have a steady legal supply, is not a terrible thing.
Sure. Yeah, not too much of it. This is amazing. You've got your website has so much research and articles and information.
Well, I posted every article I've ever written there,
and
it's available for free to anybody who wants.
And that's
michaelpollan.com.
michaelpollan.com. So make sure, make sure you go sign up for your newsletter and be subscribed to everything you have there. What's the social media place that you spend time on the most? Is there a platform of choice?
I use Twitter.
Okay.
I use Instagram, but just kind of personal way. I just post pictures I like that I've taken.
Twitter's more the research and the information that you have there.
Twitter's very useful for journalists. I mean, and so I'll if I read something interesting, and it could be about health, it could be about food, it could be about psychedelics, I'll post it. Sometimes without comment, just hey, you should read this.
Check it out. Yeah.
Yeah. So I use it that way. I don't hold forth. I don't offer a lot of opinions, but I just find it's a great way to share information.
Wow. What are you most excited about in your life right now?
What am I most excited? Well, it's spring and we're about to start gardening.
Nice.
I'm a passionate gardener, and we've had so much rain in California.
So much. Today it's raining.
It's insane, and the earth has been saturated, and you don't want to mess with the earth when it's that wet. It's bad for it. So I'm really looking forward to starting to plant and get my garden going. I grow vegetables and flowers and
that's beautiful,
and various psychoactives.
That's cool. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Well, michaelpollan.com, themasterclass.com, check you out there. The books, they can get it all at your website as well for the books. And again, you've got a number of New York Times bestsellers, so get multiple books if you want to dive in more. This is a couple questions that I have left. This is a question I ask everyone at the end called the 3 truths. So imagine a hypothetical scenario. You've written a lot. You've researched a lot. You've had a ton of experiences. And imagine you get to live as long as you want, but eventually it's your last day.
Right.
It's not that long, drawn-out death. It's a quick, healthy, quick, painless death. And imagine you continue to live your life the way you want, and achieving your dreams and connected to people you care about and healthy. But it's the last day. For whatever reason, you've got to take all of your work with you. Every article, every book, every message, the master class is gone. Everything has to go to some other place when you pass on. So for whatever reason, we don't have access to your content, your information, your wisdom. But you get to leave behind 3 final truths, 3 lessons from all of your experiences that you've learned that you would leave behind as kind of like, here are this wisdom. What would be those 3 truths for you to leave behind?
Yikes. I told you I didn't like to hear questions in advance.
Got to put you on the spot.
Well, the first one would be to honor the plants. My whole career, I have been learning from plants about how to eat, about the mind. It's amazing what they have to teach us. And, they don't speak loudly, but if you listen and you're curious. So honor the plants. That could mean growing them. It could certainly mean eating them. this is a cliche. People often say that. No one goes to their deathbeds thinking, God, I wish I'd spend more time at work. So honor your family,
That's good.
your loved ones, your sisters. I don't have brothers. Although I have brothers-in-law, your partner, your child. I think that we get caught up in things, and those are the relationships that matter at the end, and the other stuff doesn't. Third truth, I think one of the biggest problems we have is fear. I think we are closed off because we're afraid. We're afraid of trying new things. We're afraid of saying things. We're afraid of exposing our weakness. And overcoming fear.
Yeah.
I would say that's so important. My father, who was a very wise person, he got wise. He wasn't always. He was a lawyer, but he hated the law. But he liked helping people, and he had a clientele of people your age who he would help with their money issues. But their money issues were always really family issues or or self-worth issues.
Yeah.
I mean, all these kind of questions. And he would always say, your biggest problem is between your ears, he would say, and it's your fear. And he was very good at getting people to have faith in themselves, make the big move, change your career, quit that job, buy that house, marry that person. And he was a kind of just do it person. And it usually worked out. And people spend a long time procrastinating because they're afraid of change. And so embracing change and overcoming fear, I would put number 3.
I love those.
Yeah.
That's good.
I don't know about the order. I haven't thought about the order, but those are the 3 that came to me.
Honor plants, honor your family, overcome your fears. I love it. I'm a big believer that self-doubt is the killer of all dreams.
Yeah.
We can have all the talent, but if we doubt ourselves, we're not going to act courageously. We're not going to take the risks. We're not going to say what we need to say, like you said. So we've got to learn what are those fears that cause us to doubt ourselves.
Self-doubt is very much the root of fear. Ultra-processed foods as a category, which now represent more than 60% of the American diet, which is astonishing, are bad for us in many ways. And we have really good research suggesting that, and I'm not speaking any specific one, there's no research that the Beyond Burger or Impossible Burger is bad for you, but